What's going on, guys? This is another episode of Boulder Media Radio. This is episode 7. I'm your host, Javier, and I posted a post the other day that we'd be doing another episode on Friday. Sorry that it's a little bit later than what I would like to have done. Been doing a lot of work, research, getting some other stuff going on for some clients. So I wanted to get all that stuff kind of taken care of, and I've got a call here in about an hour, so I figured I would try to get this thing going right now. So if you read my post on, I think it was Wednesday maybe, about storytelling, maybe it was Thursday. Anyways, if you read my post about telling stories, then you would understand. Sorry, there's a fly flying around my house. I'm trying to kill it. And anyways, if you read my post on Wednesday about storytelling, you remember that basically the best way I can say it is that no one really cares about what you've accomplished. No one cares about what you can do, what you've done. No one cares about what you're going to do. Basically, what people care about is themselves. However, people also want to be involved in really cool stories. I think that's one of the reasons why many of us truly enjoy books and movies, is because we find a character that we like, that we relate to, and then all of a sudden we want to be just like that character. We want to be in the same category, in the same, like we want to play that lead role of that character, or there's something that we relate with them, and it's just, we want to be a part of it. Like, so my point being is that storytelling is huge, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand that. And I'm not knocking education, I'm not knocking certifications, I'm not knocking any of those things. But what I'm simply saying is that a lot of entrepreneurs really put themselves on this whole, I've got to get this next degree, I've got to get this next thing, I've got to get this next thing, and then people will start believing and seeing what I'm all about. And in reality, like, it's not always the case. Sorry, I want to kill that fly. It's not always the case, is that, if you getting that extra degree, getting that extra certification, or whatever it is, improving yourself is great, but no one cares about those little things. And I'll give you an example. I ran a fitness studio and martial arts studio for almost 10 years. And basically, wait, I think I see the fly. I'm going to kill it. Did I get it? I don't know if I got it. Okay, so I was teaching martial arts and doing personal training for about 10 years, and I had, basic certifications. That was I had a black belt. I was a certified trainer, but I didn't go out and about getting all these certifications. Like CrossFit certifications, TRX certifications, getting to 10th degree black belt. Like, I didn't get all these things, and no one cares. Okay, I never had a client walk into my studio and say, "Hey, how many certifications do you have before I start training with you? How many degrees of black belt do you have before I start training with you?" No one cares. Okay? But what people do care about are your stories and how they can relate to you, and if they can be almost like a lead role in your story. Okay? And so I brought up the point in our on Wednesday's post that the Olympics is a great platform on telling stories. They really find those 2, 3, 4, 5 athletes that have a cool story, and they basically try to get the audience, us, to fall in love with these athletes. They tell a story. Oh, that fly is still alive. They tell a story, and they basically tell them the backstory, how they got started in the sport and how they were deprived and everything, and their parents never fed them, and they were, just losers, and there was no hope for them. And then all of a sudden they, found this coach that took them in and started working with them. Like, do you see what's going on? People listen to these stories, and then all of a sudden, these athletes that you're not even aware of, that you don't even know about, you are in love with them. And you are in love with them not because of their athletic ability. You're in love with them because of their story, because there's something in their story that you're like, I can relate to that. That's like my life. I felt that way. And so I'm like getting tingles just like talking about this. I mean, great example is Michael Phelps, okay? Michael Phelps, greatest Olympian ever, right? I mean, he's got the most gold medals. And when he did his first Olympics when he was 15 years old, right? I don't think he did very well. I don't even know if he placed, okay? If he did, I think he got bronze, but otherwise I don't think he placed. Anyways, his coach just put him in there so he got the experience because he had something that the coach saw that he hadn't seen in other swimmers. Long story short, Michael Phelps had this story that he was raised by a single mom. How many people in America can relate to that? 50%. Like that's like I believe the divorce rate is roughly 50%. Okay, so half of America can relate to Michael Phelps right there. Boom. Right? ADHD, all right, had all this attention disorder, couldn't pay attention, all this stuff, okay? Now, what does that tell you? That basically says that Michael Phelps, it was like every other American kid, you know? Like, they're just like, ah! And for some reason, this whole swimming thing made him kind of calm down in a sense. And it was it was where he got in his own. And so what I'm getting to is that the story of Michael Phelps and how he kind of came about from swimming is really, really powerful, and people relate to it and they like it. And I love it, okay? And you can do this with almost any Olympic athlete. You can do this with anyone. I mean, Usain Bolt, great story, you know? Gosh, right now I can't even think of him off the top of my head. But my point being is that, you know, these Olympians, they get these stories made of them, or shared about them that people start relating with, and they start thinking like, wow, that's powerful. I can't wait to be a part of that. And they'll stay up late to watch these athletes perform, and they'll cheer them on. They'll cry. They'll do all sorts of stuff. And it's pretty cool because this is a person that no one really knows. And all of a sudden there's a story about them, and now that person is getting reported on, and people follow, and they love being a fan. And then, you know, you look at Michael Phelps when he was 15 years old, no one really knew him. You look at Michael Phelps when he competed last 2 years ago, in 2016, and did amazing at the Olympics. Last Olympics, his last hurrah. I remember watching the commercial, I think it was an Under Armour commercial about him training. And, or maybe it was, I forget which commercial it was, but it was like powerful, where he was training in the dark and he was doing all these workouts and he's swimming in the dark, and it was, the story just drew you in. And guess what? So you would stay up late and watch Phelps swim, and you would hear, you know, like him competing against his other competitors. And so it was cool. That story just stuck. And so what I'm getting to is that in business, we need to get away from trying to sell and trying to tell people why we're so much better, and we need to find ways in how we can relate to our customer. Does that sort of make sense? So that's the thing that really is powerful, is relating to your customers, finding that thing that really gets you to listen to your customer, and then you find something that relates to them. And then all of a sudden that customer is going to be more like engaged with you. They're going to be paying attention. They're going to be more involved with what you're saying, and they're excited about that. And so, but it's because of the story. It's not because of what you've done. And so I get this on occasion, is people always ask, for what we've done to help clients, marketing, like, let me see our portfolio. And I'm fine showing these things. But the flip side of it is that, like, are you buying the portfolio, or are you buying the solution that I'm going to offer you? Right. And then if I can give you a story on how to help you, then you're going to be more inclined to move forward with it. Does that sort of make sense? I can tell you right now, like, I personally, when I go out and buy if I go to a restaurant or if I go buy a certain product or something, I don't buy the product or I don't go to a restaurant just because I like it. I go sometimes because of the story. I go there because I love the story. I want to be a part of it. Okay? People want to be a part of a story that makes them the center of attention, makes them the center act, my father-in-law owns a restaurant in Colorado City, and it's called Max's Place. So shout out to Max's Place if anyone that is listening in that part of town. But what makes his restaurant successful isn't that that they have diner style type food. Okay, what makes them successful is the story behind their restaurant. Like, for instance, they don't take credit cards. Okay, that's a cool story, because in this day and age where everyone takes credit cards, guess what? Like, you go to a restaurant that doesn't take credit cards, you're like, what? I got to pay cash? Better yet, listen to this. They've also been known to give you an envelope, okay, for you to mail a check if you don't have cash on you. They have ATM, okay, but let's say you want to mail a check. They've been known to do that to travelers, okay? What restaurant will allow you to pay with a check in an IOU form, okay, and give you a stamped envelope for you to mail them a check for your food, okay? Like, none. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, the thing is that people don't do that kind of stuff, but that's a cool story, right? And then all of a sudden you hear that story, you're like, I need to go there. I'm going to show up with $4 cash, or not $4, but $20 cash or whatever, because I want to be a part of this. And so people go there for that. Okay? That's just an example. All right? My point being is that there are other choices to go pick for a restaurant. Like, there's a restaurant right across from him. Like, literally, you can walk to it. And they serve good food. All right? And it's locally owned. It's great. And there's another one across the other side of the highway that also locally owned. Great food as well, too. Point being is that Max's Place is the longest standing restaurant in Colorado City. And there's a reason why. And in my opinion is because they make their customer the center of the story. They're the star of the story. They're the star of the movie. And the customer is like, I'm a part of this. I'm a part of this community. I'm a part of something. And so that is why it's so imperative as a business that you tell stories to sell your services. Don't sell to tell stories, okay? So I don't want people to be all, I have to sell. I want people to tell stories. And so with no coincidence, one of my biggest episodes was my backstory of going from brick and mortar to digital. That was one of my biggest episodes. And it's no surprise because it's a story that people can relate to. Not everyone went from brick and mortar to digital, but what I'm saying is that people can be like, they listen to the story like, I can relate to this. I get this. And so what that does is that it gets people to start kind of, thinking, if you will, and finding things that they can relate to. They're like, that's powerful. So I'm going to give you some tips that I did a little research on that are going to help you with telling stories. And so I took some of these ideas from other sites as well too. As I was doing research, I'm like, oh, that's a good one. I like that. So one of them is every story needs to have the 5 C's. Okay, and this is kind of new to me, but I think I did it to a degree, not knowingly. All right. So 5 C's are going to be circumstance, curiosity, characters, conversations, and conflict. That's a movie, guys. That is a book. That's a novel. Okay, that's a movie. Circumstance, something that's going on. Okay, curiosity, like what happened? Did you get out of it? Characters, who were the main people that are in that movie, in that story? conversations. What were the things, the dialogue that was going on between you and some other people, and conflict? What were the challenges? What did this person have to go through to survive and make it? Like, do you see what's going on? So that's number one, is that when you tell stories, you need to have these 5 C's: circumstances, curiosity, character, conversations, and conflict. For myself, when I opened my first business, I had all of this. The circumstance was that I started a business not knowing, how to run a business. I went to school for it. Great. Okay. I had zero money. I had to look for a location. I had to get an SBA loan. I had to borrow money. The curiosity behind all this is that, how did you get all this? Like, what did you do to get all this money? What did you do to get all these leads? The conflict, I'm going to jump around, was new business, but the other part of it is opening during the recession. All right. The conversations was literally with myself, having these pains in my stomach, like knots in my stomach every day, hurting because I didn't know if I was going to succeed. I was scared. All right. The character, I was the character. Okay. And I was going through these struggles and challenges and doubts and everything. And it really brought me to my knees a lot of the times. A lot of the times, I found myself, in deep prayer and deep thought about what I had to go through. So what I'm trying to get to is that when you guys are telling a story, you need to make sure, if you want people to relate to what you're saying, to what you're talking about, then circumstance, curiosity, characters, conversations, conflict are some of the things that you need to actually bring into your story. So when you're trying to sell something, product or service, to a customer, I don't care if it's a $5 widget or a $5,000 piece of equipment, you got to find a way to tell your story and put that in there. That's number one. All right. Number two, stop bragging and start relating to your audience. I cannot emphasize this any more than exactly that. No one cares about what you've done. Okay. So, I haven't shared this. I don't share it very much publicly, but I used to compete professionally in sport karate, and I was pretty good back in the day. I actually ended up winning a world title in sport karate, in fighting, and it was great. I competed for almost 10 years, I think, and then I retired and all that stuff. I wasn't as successful as other athletes in that arena, but I did do very well. Had opportunities to get sponsored, all this other stuff, right? I did great in sport karate, and I loved it. But I don't go around telling everyone, hey, I'm a former world champion karate athlete, okay? My wife didn't even know that for the longest time while we were dating, okay? And I never really brought it up to her. It was a part of my past. Not that it was bad or anything. It was just a part of my past, So I don't bring up that because me winning a world title doesn't relate to you, okay? Like how many people in my audience that follow me, know that I've won a world title or that has also won a world title? Not very many, okay? So no one cares about, what you've accomplished. And so I don't talk about it. It's something that happened. It was something that I loved when it happened to me when I was younger, and it was a great part of my life. It was a great experience, but that's it. That's all it is, okay? It was a great experience. So don't brag about yourself, guys. You want to find a way to relate to your audience. You want to find a way to understand. And so I had a meeting yesterday with a prospective client that they have a business and some of the struggles that they're going through and stuff like that. And I found a way to relate with them. Okay, and one of them was when I opened my business in the middle of the recession. And so, and when I say middle, it was right at the beginning. It was the worst time that you could ever open a business. And I kind of told my back end of the story and how I got through it. Okay. And the way I got through it was just getting really good at digital marketing, getting really good at finding ways to grow my business. And I'm not going to say inexpensively, but in a digital arena. All right. This is the best time ever to grow your business. All right. So don't talk about yourself. Don't brag about yourself. relate to your audience. Find something that your person that you're talking to, that they are struggling with, having challenges with, that you can relate with them, and find something that they're like, that you when you're listening to them, which you got to listen to, okay, and find something that they kind of like sit on, and find a way to relate to this person or these people, okay? When you start doing that, you will start winning their attention. You will start winning their business, all right? Again, going back to the Olympics, why do you think NBC has so many stories on different athletes? It's to get you to go back and watch all these events, okay? There has to be a story for you to stick around and watch, all right? So make sure you're not talking about you. Make sure you find something that you can relate with your prospective client. All right, that's number 2. All right, number 3. You want to spark the emotional side of your audience's brain. Okay, so this is really, really important. Okay, when you're telling a good story, you need to make sure that, and let me go back. Not when you're telling a good story. When you listen to a good story, or you see a movie that has a story, and all of a sudden you get all tingly and emotional, and you might have the occasional salty discharge out of your eye. Don't really know what that is. I've heard it's called crying, but I'm not sure. I joke. I'm sorry. But what I'm getting to is that, like, you got to find, like, that emotional side is important. And as a director in a movie, you always find something to get your audience to get hooked. And so, because if you get that emotional side, then what happens is that you are, I don't know what the heck that was. That was upstairs. All right. So when you get to the emotional side, that means that you are grabbing their attention. Okay, especially if you can get them on the emotional where they're like on the verge of crying. I recall having a sit-down sales meeting with a client that was signing up for one of our fitness programs, and if she's listening, I'm not making fun of her. I'm going to keep her name away from this, but basically, what she was going through was she had to lose a lot of weight. Okay, and it was very emotional for her. I didn't purposely do this, but she started crying during the consultation. Okay, she started crying. At that moment, when she started crying, I knew I had the sale. And the reason is because I could connect with her emotionally. I was able to actually find what really was bothering her and help pull it out, not in a rude and not in a aggressive and not in a malicious way, but in a way for her to see, like, I really do need to make these changes in my life. Needless to say, she's lost over like 100 pounds, okay, since training at our studio. Going back to this is you got to find something that's going to be emotionally, that's going to be emotional, that's going to get them to catch it, okay? The brain has this tendency, and I don't know the sets of the brain. There's lots of more studies going on with all this stuff, but when something emotional happens, the brain tends to start hooking to it, okay? This is why, like, women, like my wife, and even myself, but women, they have an emotional side to where if they see a kid suffer or go through pain or cry or can't find their mommy, like the mom, okay, those women will be like, oh my God, and then they'll have this emotional thing they'll attach to it, and they'll do whatever they can to help little Johnny to find mom. Okay, you have to do the same thing too whenever you have a product or service. Okay. You got to spark that emotional side of your audience's brain. And by doing so, by telling your story, you got to know how they react when you tell that emotional part. And you got to see like how they sit, if they're sitting in closer, if they're just kind of sitting like this. Okay? You got to pay attention to their body language. But if you can find that one thing that really just, captures them emotionally, I mean, you've got them hooked, all right? All right, so far what we've covered 3. I got one more I'm going to give you, okay, is number 1 is the 5 C's, like I said, which is circumstance, curiosity, character, conversation, and conflict. I've got this written on my back screen. Number 2 is stop bragging and start relating to your audience. Number 3 is emotional side of your audience's brain, so find something that sparks with them. And then this is going to be the last one, is get your reader or the person that you're trying to sell to engaged through senses. Okay. And so this is tough. Okay. This is where you try to use, like, I smelled the chocolate chip cookies baking in the oven as they were coming out. Okay. Or I heard this really big bang and it was scary. Or my stomach were in knots for weeks because I had to do this. Or I was shaking when do you see what's going on? Okay, so you got to use these senses. And so these senses get people to relate to your audience, okay? And so as you do this, what these senses do is that they also help you have that person get drawn into the story, get drawn into what you're talking about. And it's important that you guys understand that, okay? I'm going to give you guys one last one. And so this one, it's a little different. This is where, like, the story's going to be too long, okay? And this is where it's just simple, and this is going to help you get to the point. Start in the middle. Don't start from the very beginning. Like, for instance, I wanted to open a business. I'm not going to start at the age of 14. I wanted to open a business, and then I went through high school, and then I went through. Do you see what's going on? I usually start in the middle. I usually start, was looking for a loan, was looking to do this, I was looking to do this, and I did this, this, and this, and then I just get to the point. Why do I do that? Because I want people to start, hitting all the things that my story is hitting, like the emotional sides of it, okay? Hitting my 5 C's, like all of that stuff. Don't start at the very, very beginning. Start somewhere in the middle. So I gave you that number 5 one as a bonus, okay? So to kind of go back and just talk about all this before I wrap up here, because I've been talking for almost a half hour, is basically that your story has to be powerful, has to be something that you relate to, has to be something that people can, they look at and they're like, yeah, I can totally relate to that. I can totally, I feel your emotions. If you aren't doing those things, guys, then you need to understand that you have to, how can I say this? You have to start getting more attached to your audience. You have to start being more engaged, okay? And if you're not engaged with your audience, that means that you're not thinking about them, okay? I already said this before. Your audience doesn't care about anybody else but you. Okay? They only care about, your audience doesn't care anything about else but them. That's what I meant. They only care about themselves. Let's face it. We are all selfish. All right? We all care about ourselves. And that's about it. Nothing wrong with that either. Okay? But what I have noticed is that once you start relating with your audience, once you start relating with the people that you're trying to pitch and sell, and they feel comfortable, it's a lot easier to have conversations with them. It's a lot easier to make an offer to them. It's a lot easier to say, hey, this is what this is going to cost. It's a lot easier to do all those things. It's harder coming in at this whole, this angle of like, just buy from me. Like, I'm the best person in this. I've done this. I've done that. I've done all this. Great. No one cares. Okay? Find something that they relate with. All right? And so I sit there and I think about, like, I read stories to my kids. Not every night, but a lot of nights. Okay, I'll read, their books, and they love it. They love the stories. And so, what's cool though, is my son is beginning to understand these stories, and he's beginning to relate to them. Okay, and he's beginning to, like, place what I'm talking about into like real life situation, if you will. He's 5, so what I'm getting to is that, like, I see this, that my son loves these stories and he enjoys them, but as he gets older, he's now seeing how he can be the main character of the story. And so now I'm getting why storytelling is so cool for him, because he can be the main character. And that's important, guys. we all want to be the main character of a cool story. We all want to be like that. I was the hero. I was